All right, so hello, YouTube or anyone. My name is Aviva. I'm currently finishing up my senior year at the University of Michigan, pursuing bassoon performance, and I'm going to interview Katie McKenzie about her experience being a female bassoonist, and we'll see what she has to say. So I'd love if you could just start out talking about what you do, maybe a little bit about what your background is, and if you want to go into how everything going on right now has kind of changed your life. Go into as much detail or as little as you want.
Yeah, sure. Yes, thanks for interviewing me, first of all. I'm Kate McKenzie. I got my undergrad degree at University of California, Davis, my master's at Miami University in Ohio, and then my doctoral DMA at bassoon at the Arizona State University. So that means I studied in 3 different states, 3 different teachers, and now I live in Seattle, Washington for 4th state. I am currently at freelancing, so I gig and I play around in the Seattle area, but I've also been traveling, which has been great. So I have been known to leave Seattle to play as well. And I have students, and my handful of students, some are bassoon, but some of them are actually now piano students, because when I first moved to Seattle, I did not have a lot of connections. I didn't have any, way to find those bassoon students, which are pretty rare, but it's so easy to find piano students, especially little kids who are just starting out. And I started that teaching those students when I first moved here, and I haven't stopped because it turns out I love doing that. So I have my studio here in Seattle is a mix of bassoon and piano. My life under the COVID-19 pandemic is, I feel like I'm actually one of the lucky ones. Yes, I have gigs canceled from, all through the summer, but my students were all willing to make the transition to stay on for online lessons. So I still get to see them, which is so helpful for me to maintain some normalcy and some stimulation, but also just income. So I'm not worried about, how I'm going to pay my bills. I just feel like I'm one of those lucky people that doesn't have that struggle. So life as an independent contractor is, we're flexible. We're used to being flexible, and that just kind of easily translated for me into this kind of new world. And we'll see how we get out of it when we do. Yeah.
For sure, there's a lot of changes, and everybody's like experiencing different levels of it for sure.
Mm-hmm.
So one of the things that you mentioned you were interested in talking about was defining success, and I'm really interested to hear what you have to say about that.
Yes, the reason why I said that was the main interest of mine when you sent me that list of questions was because I feel like since leaving school 5 years ago, went straight through all of my schooling. So I was a student every year of my life from preschool to the end of my doctoral degree. And then the transition out into professional world was so extreme and jarring for me. And I was forced to just kind of go on this journey to figure out what success meant, because what I had originally thought success would mean as a professional when I was a student wasn't translating. And if I continued to hold on to that old feeling of what I thought success once meant, it would just be very detrimental to my mental health. So I realized I needed to change that in order to live and be happy. And so I still feel like I'm on that journey, and I've come a long ways in the past 5 years, but I am still working on that. But as a result, something I talk about all the time with other professionals, with my students, people who aren't even in music, it's just opened up all sorts of conversations with people that just, lead to some, really deep conversations and exploration, and I'm hoping that maybe it's inspiring other people to do that as well, to prevent themselves from getting in some sort of a rut, or who already are in a rut to help get out, because that's something that I felt like that's what I had to do. So that meant I had to redefine success, and it just always came back to happiness. What makes me happy? When I was a student, bassoon made me happy. Playing an orchestra made me happy. Taking lessons made me happy. Well, now I'm still playing in orchestras, but I'm not learning, discovering all these brand new pieces all the time. And I'm always having this elation of emotions every time I hear something, because I've so much of the repertoire I've heard and I played so much, and there's not a lot of opportunity to explore, not it being pushed by teachers to look for a new repertoire, all that sort of, that kind of new discovery of music that I fell in love with isn't happening anymore. So I realized that I need to keep doing that. So I, branched out, playing in sorts of, taking gigs of unusual things, and that helps me. I mean, by non-conventional gigs, whether it's, random ensembles or busking on the side of the street, things like that, just kind of branching out from your norm, because there is things to discover there, and you can get that love again from it. But also, I had to learn that maybe happiness doesn't always come from my career, and that I was so career focused, especially in college, especially in grad school, and that I should, just really consider the idea that my career can enhance my happiness, but it's not the source of it. I very much consider myself a teacher, more so than a performer. I have that drive. The fulfillment comes for me from teaching very easily. So, but when I was in grad school, I wanted to be in academia. I wanted to teach college students. I did everything I could to work with the undergrads. When I was a grad student, I loved that. And I still do. I love working with undergrads. But I realized that that's harder, especially with adjunct teaching is more and more prevalent. I had an adjunct job in Arizona at a community college, and I loved it, and I loved my students. I had nothing wrong with it, but I realized, didn't even have to leave college quite yet to realize that this isn't what's going to be super fulfilling and make me super happy to just do this all the time. That is going to be that way for other people. I'm not slamming adjunct work, but for me personally, I realized, okay, what I thought I wanted might not be as fulfilling as possible if it's not the right working environment. So teaching, like I said, I started teaching piano students, and turned out I like it. It's because I found that those things that I love about teaching, I can find in little kids. I love teaching undergrads who are brand new adults learning about the world as an adult. That same sort of thing comes from a child. They're just learning about the world for the first time as a child. And you, as a music teacher, as their private lesson teacher, have that unique experience of being their mentor. And so you can talk to them about, you get to watch them grow, and you get to, I'm trying to figure out the best way to say this. You get to watch them grow into some complex super being. And it's the same joy watching a little kid who's just learning half notes and whole notes as watching a undergrad. I found that I have the same joy from that. So therefore, I redefine my success, meaning I'm a teacher. I can teach whatever. I like that. So I'm going to teach piano, and I'm going to teach little kids, because that's the way that I can live the lifestyle I want and be happy and comfortable with my family, and have this career, and not have to be just in complete competitive mode, destruction mode, just single focus. I need to be in academia or I will not have success. Does that make sense?
Yeah, absolutely. And it sounds like you've struck a really good balance between like doing the things that people have maybe not told you are what you're supposed to do, but we've kind of all assumed are what you're supposed to do, and the things that actually bring you joy, and that is really encouraging to me. And
Yeah, like I said, I'm still on that journey
right.
for sure, right? But yeah, that's exactly it. It's you need to have happiness, and you need to figure out what that is for you, and it's not necessarily what you're always told.
Yeah, that's a big one. So you did mention your family, and I'm wondering, um, you talked about it a little bit, but how do you balance music and work with having a small child, and raising a family and anything you want to do that's not music related?
Yeah, well, the skills that I learned as a college student by keeping yourself organized and is still 100% applicable to my life today as a professional. As a, as a freelance or independent contractor, I have different schedule every day, every week, every month, what projects I'm involved in and over here. Those people aren't the same as over here. So I wear a lot of different hats and I do a lot of different roles, and there's always time conflicts. So, I mean, but it was very similar for me, especially grad school. So just keeping, maintaining schedule and all that sort of um, tools like that are really necessary. But, and also the skills of, of maintaining your priorities is also something that is what I developed in college. And it turns out that, I now have a son who's 3, and he is a top priority. And so when I have to make the decision of, do I, practice, or do I work on letters and shapes with my son, I almost always pick letters and shapes with my son and try to find practicing somewhere else. He is a priority, and that is because he makes me happy. He makes me, and that's my success. I'm really lucky in that my husband, is a great partner, and so I can go out and take gigs as I want to, and that requires going to rehearsals and practicing for those gigs, making rings for those gigs. So I do have to contribute, and I need an income to contribute to my family. And so I have to kind of make that balance, and it's not always easy. And I don't think there's a parent out there who says it's easy. But that's what life is, and so you have to make it work. And I don't regret, being on this journey with my son.
So one of the other things that I think might be especially important to people, during this time of kind of flux and uncertainty, is thinking about how we handle days when we don't necessarily want to come to the bassoon, or we don't think that it's one of the things that will bring us happiness. So I was wondering if you had anything that you do or you've seen other people do to handle days when you don't think you have the motivation, or what you do to get motivation, whether that's bassoon related or non-bassoon related.
Yeah, so well, I feel like that's a two-sided answer is needed. One, if bassoon's not bringing you happiness, um, is there might be a need for question why you're doing it, and I feel like that's really harsh. But if it's truly deeply not bringing you happiness, then it should be okay to admit that. Even after years and years and years of playing and dedicating your life and taking out student loans to pursue it, it should be okay to admit that. I, of course, go through days where I hate the bassoon. I hate my bassoon. I hate reeds. I wonder why I do this to myself. And the reason why I haven't quit is because I also know that with those low lows, I also have high highs with music and playing. And I, am still experiencing that as a professional. So I try to have that in my back of my mind. I'm at a low. I'm going to be at a high again. If I didn't want to have these giant peaks and valleys in my life, then I could go get some sort of office job, something more stable and and consistent. And there's a reason why I didn't do that. That's not my personality. That's not going to bring me happiness. So I, will try to just remember those peaks and those low times. The other thing is that when I don't want to practice bassoon, I've started to practice the piano instead because I have these piano students. So I've been working on my own piano skills, and it is so easy to practice the piano compared to practicing bassoon in terms of it's always ready. It's just there. You don't have to do anything besides lift that lid. There's no reed. There's no seat strap. There's no warm up. I mean, yes, you have to warm up, but there's no breath warm up. It's just, I can just sit down and play for 5 minutes while I wait for my water to boil for my coffee, or I can play for 3 hours while my son's at school. It's just so much easier. And so because it's easier for me to practice piano, it's less work. And I tend to not have that demotivating side to it like I do bassoon. Probably also because there's not a lot of pressure in my piano playing. It's just working with young students and who are learning the very, very, very basic. So I don't have any sort of pressure. So there's not that negative side. So I think that finding another creative outlet, musical outlet, is a good potential alternative to practicing the bassoon, because then you're still reading, you're still thinking about music, you're expanding your mind and you're expanding your experiences outside of the bassoon. That's great. You may not be working on your embouchure, your breath support, which is stuff we need to maintain for sure. But it does have other benefits that can for sure help your bassoon playing.
Absolutely. I've been finding that not only because I have more time right now, but if I don't want to get the bassoon out or don't want to do something as loud, I'll play guitar.
Yes, as loud. Yes, yeah. So you feel me. It is hard work to play the bassoon, just to get it out, right?
Yeah. One piece.
Yeah.
And I don't have to be good at it.
No, yeah, the pressure is off.
Yeah, and I find sometimes it's easier to put detailed effort into something that's not the bassoon, since I'm so used to putting detailed effort into the bassoon.
Yeah.
Give your brain something else to think about.
Exactly. And I think that it's a great thing to think about. It's not fluff at all. It's good for your brain to do stuff like that. So, I think.
Yeah, repetitive motion is bad for the brain too, right?
Yes.
So this is kind of a continuation of that question, but I was wondering, just in general, I guess, what inspires you?
I very much feel that art is an incredibly essential aspect to our life as humans, and as musicians, we are artists. And so that's what keeps me going, and that's what keeps me teaching, is that there's a need for art. And we can even see that now. We're not considered essential workers, but my Facebook is just full of people playing on their social media. And it's like, we're not performing for people, so here's our performance. Which is crazy, because we've always had social media. People could be doing this whole time, right? We didn't need a pandemic to tell us to spread our art on social media, but we are. And now it's so cool to see. Friends of mine on Facebook from high school who weren't musicians necessarily, or who I would played in high school band with, but they didn't continue playing their instrument, picking up an instrument and playing on social media. I mean, it's so cool to see the amateurs and professionals alike just coming together and throwing all their music up online for other people. I think it's really powerful. And that's why I personally stay in the biz, is because I like I like the idea of sharing and spreading that with my students, with strangers, with my friends who are willing to listen. And then I would also say my biggest inspiration are my students, as cliche as that is. Like I said, I'm a teacher, and so watching them grow is just the most fulfilling, part of my whole life. It's just and seeing students, blossom, and it doesn't even have to be blossom into a musician, blossom into confident people, well-read people who can read well-read kids, creative problem solvers. I mean, I take credit for so much of that because those are skills we learn in music, and those are such important skills for just having good citizens and having a good society. And I feel like working with children on these skills is just incredibly inspirational.
Definitely. I think music education is so important, and I hope that that's one of the things that we learn from the pandemic.
I agree, yes.
Um, so thinking about not just the whole field that we're in, but people picking up the instrument that they haven't played in years and posting. Um, what do you think are essential qualities that make a good musician?
Um, I just kind of briefly mentioned problem solving.
Mm.
I think that is a really good one in terms of, my macro and micro thinking in this. And that macro, like here we are in this pandemic, how are we going to survive and still play our music, whether you're professional, how are we going to make an income when we're not considered essential workers, but also how are you going to make an income when there isn't a pandemic, right? Problem solving, stuff like that. But it's also problem solving within music. This note always comes out out of tune, or it always cracks. What can I do? Changing articulations or um, uh, changing dynamics, working with rubato and rhythm, any sort of kind of like little things like that to make beautiful art. There's all these problems that we have to solve along the way. And by learning those skills and practicing within music, I find in my adult life outside of music, I'm using those skills all the time. And it would be great, if everybody could always just kind of be great problem solvers. And so, yeah, so yeah, like it comes back to my students. I'm creating an army of students who are great problem solvers. And I also, would say the other parts of being disciplined, having routine, and what I'm trying to say, having discipline to master your craft, and that involves having routines, and that involves also being kind of mentally balanced and aware of who you are as a human and what you're doing. I think that all the I guess I keep making this coming back to being a good musician, having happiness, being well balanced. I think that they're all interconnected.
Yeah, all of those things are very related.
Yeah.
You have to be solid mentally to be able to keep a routine, right?
Yeah. Yeah.
Yeah, and I think those are probably also things you learned or developed in college.
Oh yes, absolutely. And I had three very different teachers in college and bassoon professors, and they were all three of them, though different, were all incredibly disciplined and successful in what they were doing. And so I definitely learned from them. And I think that, especially my undergrad teacher, I was a little resistant and stubborn at first. I was kind of a bit of a wild child, and I look back that I look back at my time in college, and those are some of the biggest life altering skills that I learned. And all three teachers gave a different flavor and a different variety, and it kind of mixed together and it produced me.
Like another set of parents.
Yeah, for sure.
Um, Things might have changed a little bit with the pandemic and everything, but could you talk a little bit about some of the routines that you keep?
Yes, yeah. Well, like I said, I've got a 3-year-old son. Not only that, that he's has special needs, so our routine is very, very important, um, in terms of just kind of my daily life, and seamlessly incorporate my daily life routine with everything I do with my career and music. So it's, getting up at the same time, having breakfast at the same time. I wasn't like this until I had a kid, though, by the way. But I did practice at the same time. When I was a college student, I learned that from my teacher, at my master's teacher, and I learned in college that I'm a morning practicer. My best practicing happens in the morning. So I still to this day practice in the morning. It's the first thing that I do when my son gets on the school bus. I come right back and I just knock it out, and sometimes it's a long practice session. Sometimes it's something quick, learning music for some gig that I have to absolutely learn. Sometimes it's I can't touch the bassoon. I'm just going to play piano for a little bit. But I just try to there's a time of the day I play music. And it's still the same with this pandemic. I'm doing more homeschooling with my son now. So we have this schooling routine, and my husband takes part of that. So we switch off and I come in and I practice and play while he's doing that. So, and then it's the same with reed making. I've never been one of those people that just really, really loved reed making. I have a lot of friends who do, and I try to get that from them, as much as I can. But I've never liked reed making as much as I like practicing. But I do it anyway, in the same way, same time. I just have dedicated read hour, like we had in college, read class. It's now read class with just me and myself and Netflix, right? But it's the same thing. And it's always kind of, and, and, and I find that routine is the only way that I can make things happen, um, consistently.
Yeah, and I think we really need routine right now because I know, like for me, so much of my schedule has gone out the window because like I don't have classes to go to.
Yeah. Suddenly the routine's like, get dressed.
Yeah, yeah. Or it's like, are you gonna get up or are you gonna lay in bed forever? But there's also a layer of that where it's like, well, I can't practice super early because my roommates aren't all awake yet.
Yeah. Yeah. You have to be flexible. That's a really good point. I mean, if you have to be flexible, because if you are too inflexible with your routine, you're just going to be met with frustration, and that's going to drain your happiness.
Yeah, yeah. About your happiness. I love that. Important. I think so many people that I see in college, especially, are um, not necessarily unhappy, but just driving so hard to like practice enough or get everything done that they're not getting enough sleep and they're not like they're not eating enough or they're not eating well. And I can't function if I do that.
Hmm.
It just doesn't work. Um,
Yeah.
and I love the idea that everything and of course not everything you're doing can bring you joy, but that you at the root of it it should.
Yeah. Yeah. Having a balanced life will bring you joy, and that includes doing things that you don't always want to do,
Yeah.
right?
Making your way.
But and even if you're living an imbalanced life now as a college kid, that's not sustainable as you get older. That's not something that you can keep up. So it's good to get those skills now for sure.
Yeah. So, did you find that during college things, I know you were learning all of these skills, but were things a little more unbalanced for a while, or has your relationship with the bassoon changed since then for that or other reasons?
Oh yes, I was imbalanced in college, and I wonder if I look back, if I really was as imbalanced as I felt. If other people would be surprised that I would say that. I But I for sure I had an idea of what I wanted. I was one of those students that kind of went above and beyond on everything. And I wanted all the opportunities and all the experiences. And it didn't matter if I was going to get a grade for it. I just wanted everything. And I wanted to practice, and I wanted to be, and I wanted to have the best reads, and I wanted to have 1,000 of the best reads. But I was also incredibly social. So I wanted to be friends with everybody, and I wanted to go to every party, and so I wanted all the gigs. So that 5 years, this is part of that journey I've been on the last 5 years, is slowing down and finding a balance. And I feel like with the first 2 to 3 years of those 5 years since becoming a professional, I was not in balance at all. However, I got pregnant almost immediately and had a newborn almost immediately after graduating. So that really, it wasn't, that really throws everybody off, I think. So now it's only just kind of recently in the last few years, now that my son is getting older, that I can find a balance, and I'm feeling happier, and I'm feeling, more content, and I have more self-worth. Before that, I felt like my self-worth was tied into how well I did on ensemble auditions and what sort of random gigs that I could get as a student, and just, and then I would play in some awesome, school performance of some, Beethoven's Ninth, and then the next day or that night after the performance, it'd be like, that's it. Like, now I don't have joy anymore, and I felt like my self-worth was too tied into who I was as a bassoonist, or not even that, what I was doing as a bassoonist, not even who I was. And that's just really imbalanced way to live. I actually even heard Conan O'Brien talk about this, and he said the same thing, that he would just go into these horrible slumps after the ends of shows, or whatever movies he was working on, and it's just like, you of all people had like low self-worth, he's still experiencing this, and he seems somebody who's worth a lot, right? Whose career is worth a lot. And so I remember hearing him talk about that, and I just was like, this is so relatable, and I can't believe he's experiencing that. And yeah, it's time to untie my self-worth from these projects I'm working on as an artist.
Yeah, I think that's really hard, especially when we are in the college atmosphere, when like it seems like if you don't do well on an ensemble placement audition, that's like defines how good you are at your instrument, and
Yeah.
therefore defines how good you are as a person. And
Yes.
none of those things should be tied together.
Shouldn't. No, they shouldn't. And auditions are so, you just never know what sort of decisions are being made behind the scenes. It's just such a horrible thing to tie your self-worth to, because it's not even, it's not always accurately showing who even is the best player.
Yeah, and especially, I mean, here when it's like 5 minutes of your life compared to 5 minutes of a bunch of other people's lives, how much
Yeah.
is that really telling you?
Yeah. Yes. Your life is worth more than those 5 minutes.
Yeah, that's good to hear that.
Yeah.
Speaking of school, just one other thing about that. Is there something you wish was a larger part of your curriculum in any of your degrees?
I feel I loved college. First of all, I would never have left college if I didn't have to. So I, think about each year, each school and each teacher as different chapters. I went to an undergrad that was not known. It's not known for its music department. However, it is a fairly well-respected school, University of California, Davis in general. I didn't think I was going to be a music major. I didn't plan on being a music major. I didn't have an interest in going to music school. So I went to this cool school that was really great. They offered me a scholarship to play in the orchestra because they needed bassoons. Great. You have to take lessons in order to play in bassoon, so and it was kind of through that orchestra. I ended up taking theory and history that first year too, in music classes. And that's when I discovered this is where I have to be. There's no other option. This is my major. So I wonder, maybe I should have transferred at that point to a more a bigger program, because I felt a little unprepared when I got to my master's degree, and I had a lot of catching up to do. But I look back on that, and the life experiences that I learned at that school as an undergrad were so, important in my development. I don't regret it actually at all. I went to a great school, and I was so lucky that my two teachers as a grad student were incredibly flexible and just kind of let me do, like I said, I wanted to do everything, and they let me do everything, and they really supported me, and they developed all sorts of unique curriculums and stuff like that. I studied with Dr. Schillinger at Miami University, and she knew I wanted to go into teaching. So I observed lessons from her. I observed multiple lessons of every single student in the studio. I wrote down all these reflections. We would talk about them. This is all I was also taking my own lessons, right? And all my other classes and everything. So I think back, I was like, I can't believe that I spent so much time in her little office when she gave so many lessons. But the skills that I learned from that, were just invaluable. And she just took all that extra work on for me. And I just feel so thankful for that. And it really made me who I am. I think that though I was lucky, the one thing that wasn't prepared for it, and I'm not even sure if anybody could prepare for me, it was what I talked about, was this transition into professional life after being a student for so long. I felt very imbalanced, and I didn't feel like I had the skills to find my balance. And I would have maybe, I have no idea how things could have been different for me as a student to prevent that. But maybe working to try to broaden horizons beyond you have to be an orchestral player or you have to be in academia to be successful and happy.
Yeah, I hope that schools are moving more towards catering to that. And I think
Yeah,
at least,
I think so too. I have a feeling they are too, now that I've been out and I've met and I've seen how they've changed. And even in the 5 years that I've been, it seems like a lot of change has happened in that time. And I'm thrilled about that, because that's the only way that we're going to be able to survive as an industry.
um, well, I will stop the recording in a second, but was there anything else you would like to share?
I feel like I've said a lot. I'm so thankful for this opportunity. Thank you. It's really great to be able to see what other people are saying in these interviews, and to talk to you and meet you. And I appreciate the platform.
Yeah, thank you so much for talking. It's been really
Yeah.
nice to hear about what you've got to say and what you've got going on.
Yeah. Thank you.
I'm gonna stop this.